In the previous episode, I presented you a brief introduction into the world of ASMR. We talked about what ASMR is, how the phenomenon emerged, the ASMR effect, and research. We've also established that ASMR is a physiological response, and I've argued the claim that it is the first in the chain of events that defines the ASMR experience. Welcome back to another episode on this analysis series on autonomous sensory meridian response. Today we'll continue our series by taking a closer look at the core of ASMR videos and also at the ASMR effect itself, the pleasant sensation that we commonly call tingles and how it is related to the phenomenon. But before we start, if you haven't already, I would highly encourage you to go back to watch the first episode. Although these episodes could be watched standalone, it would definitely help if you were up to speed with the topics presented so far. Tingles find themselves at the center of the ASMR experience. Whether it be through the help of an ASMR video when hearing specific sounds, or whether it be in real life through physical touch or close interpersonal proximity. It has been reported by numerous people online that the sensation and the subsequent calming state it induces helps them with insomnia and to battle feelings of depression and anxiety as well. So how can that be? How can this sensation help with such issues? We've touched on this subject a bit in the previous video, noting that the physiological response known as the ASMR effect could be likened to a non-verbal mechanism in which a parent, predominantly a mother, might soothe their child. However, how ASMR manages to replicate that type of relationship or circumstance is a complex issue. When taking a closer look at ASMR videos, it appears that sounds themselves aren't necessarily the main scope or focal point of these videos. At least, that's not why they are being watched. I know it seems a bit contradictory to say this, since sounds technically trigger the ASMR effect, which brings about the feeling of calmness and well-being, right? Well, yes, but let's entertain this thought for a minute. For the longest time, maybe even since the beginning of YouTube, there have been numerous types of videos tailored for relaxation and meditation. For example, videos that contain sounds found in nature, like rain or river sounds, or sometimes religious chanting, gongs, chimes, many variations of these types of relaxation methods. They all had achieving relaxation through sounds as their primary objective, but their popularity compared to ASMR is probably different than what you might expect. Using Google Trends, I've picked 5 initial items which I thought to be the most relevant to relaxation videos, concluding that meditation seems to be the most popular one. Comparing it with ASMR, we can see that ASMR has received much more interest over time. However, when we add other terms such as rain and rain sounds, we can see a much more different result. But what does this mean? Frankly, I'm not entirely sure, but by taking a closer look at also the related queries, we can deduce that people searching for rain have various reasons for doing so other than relaxation, hence the difference between the terms rain and rain sounds. For example, this peak in 2011 is most likely explained not by a sudden melancholic urge to listen to rain on YouTube, but rather by the release of Adele's hit song Set Fire to the Rain. Another interesting aspect is that while ASMR increases in popularity, rain displays the opposite. Even though correlation doesn't mean causation, my takeaway is that it is entirely plausible that the audience could have found ASMR as a much more powerful substitute for their needs. Regardless of the case, ASMR right now appears to be winning this popularity contest. That means that ASMR has an edge over conventional relaxation videos, something that sets it apart. So, what could that be? One possible answer is that while relaxation videos are pretty much objective, with no personality, ASMR videos on the other hand are the stark contrast of that. They have a human element about them. There is always a performer that is making those sounds, no matter how hidden that person is. Even if a creator only shows their hands, that is enough evidence for our perception to confirm that those sounds are indeed created by another person, and in some sense, that this person is making them for us. What is evident about these videos is that even if they are a service, it often appears not to be so. It rather appears to be an act of kindness instead, as if the viewer is being cared for. And this fantasy is often actively reinforced by different intimate roleplays. This creates a type of faux intimacy, which is the perfect environment in which the ASMR effect can even occur. Although not the only one. Similar scenarios can happen in real life too. Think when you're getting a haircut, or your hair is being washed at a salon. That is a service, and yet that is also an experience that is capable of invoking the ASMR effect. Though in this case, nobody really is questioning if paying someone to take care of your hair is a matter of kindness or not. So bottom line, human interaction appears to be the key that makes ASMR different, whether real or virtual. It's what makes it successful and unique. Another argument supporting the claim that sounds aren't the main point of ASMR videos is the fact that triggers themselves don't vary on a macro level between ASMR videos. Tapping on wood will always sound the same regardless of circumstance, as opposed to, say, tapping on metal. What will differ, however, is the way in which they are made, or the rhythm of the sounds, the intensity, each depending on the skill or style of the ASMR artist. It is true that there could also be variations of sound quality depending on recording hardware. However, personally, I perceive those differences to be negligible. Allow me to demonstrate. I'm going to play a couple of videos focusing on similar triggers. As can be observed, each type of trigger sounds very similar across creators. What differs is the technique employed by each individual ASMR artist. In other words, sound variation is controlled by the person and does not stem from the object used. Based on these examples, it seems to me that the primary reason why an ASMR video differs from the next is not due to what sounds are expected to be heard, but rather due to the performers themselves being the main focal point of the video. This is also supported by the fact that whispering, one of the most popular triggers, is not a common or objective sound. It is dictated by the performer's voice. Therefore, it makes sense that different viewers find different creators' voices more appealing than others. Not to mention the reasons why ASMR channels thrive. Personality of the ASMR artist is an important factor, style, demeanor, even physical attractiveness plays a role, whether we like it to admit it or not. However, other important factors are creativity, perseverance, quality, skill, competence, originality. These all contribute heavily to what makes an ASMR channel successful, which essentially also supports the idea that the main focal point of ASMR videos are indeed the performers, the ASMR artists. Alright, so having exhausted the line of reasoning, let's talk next about the tingles themselves, the ASMR effect. It is my belief that the reason why ASMR videos are so popular, since I've built a case that ASMR artists are the prime focus of these videos, is the audience desire to connect with the said artists, or with other people in general. It looks to me that the tingles stem from that interaction, and the subsequent relaxation is rather an effect that emerges by fulfilling that desire to connect, instead of the relaxation being the original purpose. Tingles appear to act like an independent response. What it is accompanied by, be it a feeling of relaxation or otherwise, is rather being determined by a multitude of factors. For instance, whether or not we desire that interaction to begin with, the nature of that desire, or whether or not it is fulfilled. What I mean by that is that tingles could occur even if you don't want them to. This is basically what autonomous means in ASMR. It means we don't have control over this physiological response, but rather that it happens on its own. I will refer back to the hairdresser example. Even if that interaction is not really desired, and even if we feel a certain amount of discomfort while it is happening, thus negative emotion, we can still experience the ASMR effect. So, if that is really what is going on, then it means that relaxation is the good outcome of ASMR and not the only one, which is a massive difference. It is possible through ASMR we could also experience or even amplify negative emotions such as loneliness or anxiety. At this point you might be thinking, hold on, there is also a massive difference between being uncomfortable at the hairdresser while experiencing the ASMR effect and ASMR being able to amplify anxiety. That seems like quite a stretch. Well, think of it this way. Let's say that your desire watching ASMR is to alleviate anxiety or dealing with a panic attack. Alright, ASMR has been reported to have been effective at combating such feelings, so let's assume that it is. Certainly, at some point, similar to building immunity to certain medications, ASMR won't work as efficiently as it did in its initial stages. And we know this happens. We even call it tingle immunity, at which point our desire to alleviate anxiety may not be completely fulfilled. In fragile disorders such as depression, experiencing a sudden highly positive change in circumstances and then seeing that same change slowly fade over time, thus relapsing to a negative state, can have a bottom line worse effect on the depression. Not to mention the highly addictive potential that this circumstance presents. We watch ASMR, it works less and less, which could lead us to consume more and more videos. This could be illustrated in the case where one person uses the same ASMR video to fall asleep every night. At one point, that video may not work as efficiently as it did before, which is a situation that could generate frustration, anxiety, panic, all because what was previously seen as reliable has stopped working. This reliability issue is an issue whose presence is not at all obvious in the ASMR phenomenon, mainly because the high efficiency in its early stages gives that impression of long-term consistency. In conclusion, rather than being associated with relaxation, tingles seem to be an independent effect. Whatever feelings it is accompanied by, whether positive or negative, are instead determined by whether or not we found what we were looking for in those videos. Now this puts ASMR in a difficult predicament for sure, because the culture around the ASMR phenomenon has evolved to be overwhelmingly positive, sustaining the idea that ASMR is therapeutic when it comes to mental health. The very existence of negative emotions anywhere around ASMR heavily challenges that positive portrayal. And to some degree, I think this contradiction creates a tension that could be felt when taking an objective look at the phenomenon, which proves that ASMR is a much more complex issue than we would like it to be. It speaks to the volatility of the sensation and how it can go both ways with remarkable intensity. However, if we manage to learn more about ASMR, we might find that what we have on our hands here is a wonderful new tool that, when harnessed correctly and with care, could prove to be monumentally beneficial. And on this note, we conclude today's discussion on ASMR. More to come very soon, so please stay tuned. Thanks for watching and see you next time.